Hi, I'm Jay Clark. I'm the founder of EarPeace. Thanks very much for being with us. I'm joined today by the Reverend Moose. He's the co-founder and executive director of the National Independent Venue Association, which is quite literally saving our performance stages. The association was set up shortly after the pandemic started to advocate for the independent venues that are the cradle for so many of the upcoming artists that we love and their music. We met each other several years ago when he brought National Independent Venue Week to the United States from the UK. Now Moose is in the thick of advocating for multiple bills before Congress to fund and save independent venues that cannot make it without assistance. This is a big deal for anyone that loves live music in their local venue. It's a big deal for anyone that loves Broadway. This is a really big deal for the shops and the restaurants and the neighborhoods that surround these venues. It's a big ecosystem that is under threat. Moose, thank you very much for speaking with us today about what's going on.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Delighted, man. So I'd like to take a little bit of a step back before the dark times, so to speak. Before
2016. Wait, that's not what you meant. Got it.
And I'd like to start off with a quote from James Murphy from LCD Sound System describing the network of independent venues in the United States as a coral reef, which I thought was just fantastic. Sort of an independent, really living system. Help us understand the importance of these independent venues to the artist community and the cities where they operate. How are they all connected?
Yeah, you know, the coral reef really is a great metaphor for this, because coral reefs, they kind of find their own roots. You know, they take place where they take place. It takes a long time for them to actually develop. They do, and then they attract a lot of tourists. You know, it's easy to be able to damage it without necessarily even the intent to damage it. There's a lot of man-made outside forces that impact the reef system without even necessarily directly being in that place. I think venues are very much the same in their own communities. They're, you know, they are they end up in economically deprived neighborhoods. They are often the first tenant in a neighborhood that would be followed by more high-paying tenants. And with that comes the stress of increased rent, increased taxes, increased, you know, bills and insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that, you know, especially people that are on the, let's say, the early adapter stage, right? The ones that go out to shows before other people have heard of the bands, they're used to going to that cool new club that's in the middle of some industrial area and you know, parking on the street and all the other things that come with it. And then 3, 4, 10 years later, you're paying $25 for parking, and you know, everything is expensive. But the venues are there, and they're the ones that have driven that culture and that community to be able to grow around it. That's locally. On a national basis, every single venue is dependent upon what is happening in the town or the city or the state next door. And so, you know, when you're talking about local bars with a microphone stand, that's different. You grab your guitar case, you go down to the pub, you play a couple songs, you go back home at the end of the night. Well, if you're on tour, you have to sync this up across the entire country and be able to say, okay, if I'm going to be doing Indianapolis tonight, I have to be able to do Chicago on either side of that. And then I have to figure out how to get to Oklahoma City. Then I have to figure out how to get from there to Portland. You know, how do you fill those dates? So you have to be able to it's a giant network of relationships and locations. And what's really at risk right now, as all of these venues have had essentially no income whatsoever, and they still maintain the high taxes, the mortgages, the rent, the bills, the insurance, those that could have maintained some semblance of payroll, you know, all of these things. And there's an endpoint to that, you know, so without federal relief, without some type of congressional support or governmental support, we're going to see more and more of these ecosystems just disappear. And like the coral reef, they're not just going to magically come back. They have to have that foundation. They have to develop. It takes resources. It takes focus. It takes people specifically caring for that growth and development. And you know, it's tough to do if you're 6 months in arrears. And that
Yeah.
is in addition to an already thinly marginalized, marginally profitable business to begin with.
Well, I think that that is, I think that what a lot of people probably don't understand, speaking exactly to that, is that, you know, these independent venues really have a very unique business model that is particularly challenged by the pandemic. And you know, for most of them, like a staged reopening, you know, up to, okay, we're going to let in 25% of people or 50% of people, just isn't possible. Tours can't operate that way either, right? So if you need that spot, you need that town in between, you know, your big shows. Can you help us understand the special challenges that venues face to reopen? Like what are the dynamics of the business that make it so challenging, and what are the decisions that what are the decisions these venue owners are making right now?
Sure. They're the things people think about, right? Like there's going to have to be different PPE, cleaning protocols, et cetera. It would be great to have more direction as to what that specifically means from a governmental level.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't existed. We had to create our own resource guide that sort of cobbled together all these different assets that some cities or municipalities are putting together, and obviously make our own suggestions too. So at least venues had a starting point. That's kind of, I think, the most obvious part when people think about what it takes to be able to go and experience live music again. So here's what they're not necessarily thinking about. They're not thinking about what it takes to actually power on the space. You have a staff that has been almost universally furloughed across the country. So you have to rehire your staff, many of which, especially those that might have been living in city centers, have dispersed through different parts of the country, but moving back home or to places with cheaper rent or whatever the case might be. And then of course you have the training systems. You have to make sure that you have the right people in place for the right jobs. There's new jobs that are going to exist as you start talking about different PPE protocols. And of course you have to figure out how to book talent again. Like our opening system, I don't mean figure out how to book talent. You have to get the talent in the system. So if this artist is able to play on the first, who's going to play on the second? Who's going to play on the third? Where are they going to be the night before, the night after? And so this is not like an easy plug and play, open the doors and the business is open type of situation.
Right.
This is a 3 to 6 month ramp up period. When we say that independent venues are the first to close and they will be the last to open, that is literal. In the very early days of this, and people were talking about the 4 phases of reopening, and we saw these maps too, we were at the tail end of phase 4. Right now in the US, it's something like 90% of businesses are open to some capacity.
Right.
We're not.
Right.
And even those that have some type of ability to open their doors, maybe at limited capacity, or they have a restaurant that's added on, it is a fraction of sustainable business. There's no business in the world that can be told in one day you're no longer allowed to operate. You can't make any money for 6 months, and now you're going to be able to make what? 5%, 10% of what you were doing. So you're not only paying back the debt, that doesn't go away, right? Like all these programs, these eviction moratoriums, the loans that the government's giving, it's all coming back at some point. So you have to not only run a business, you have to run a successful business, and you have to pay back the last 6 months of something that was nobody's fault. So there's no reason that the government shouldn't be able to help. And if they are able to mandate that the rooms stay closed, they should be able to pay so that those rooms can exist when it's safe to reopen.
Yeah. And could you speak a little bit to like how these venues are funded. I think we're, you know, a lot of us are familiar with, you know, sort of big arenas, you know, big companies like Live Nation or AEG, you know, that are public or have really deep pockets. Like, what does it mean to be your average venue owner?
Well, you know, I don't know if everybody is familiar with you know, with how the bigger venues operate either, right? Like, I don't know if we spend a lot of time thinking about this outside of the industry. You
Mm.
buy your ticket, you go to your show, you pay for your drink, you pay for parking possibly. You know, at some point you buy a T-shirt, you tell your friends that place is great. You know, whatever it is that's going on, right? Like, those are the little elements of it. I think that the difference between an independent and a multinational or a publicly traded company is you have more choices with the independents. You know, the independents have more choices. They get to choose who the ticketing company is. They get to choose what the artists that they're booking are. They get to choose the price points for their tickets, what type of music is being performed, who's going to open, you know, all of these things that get to be chosen locally. And they're largely locally owned, sometimes family run businesses, sometimes they're public companies or a public owned by local communities or owned by the state or the municipality,
Mm-hmm.
and but they're run and booked locally, so they have the ability to cater into their own community's needs. They have the ability to factor that into their programming, into their staffing, into what type of pricing they're going to charge to be able to make their own goals. And I think that, you know, when there is no business to be had, and these independently operated businesses don't have shareholders that can reinvest or access to the same Wall Street banks that the large multinational companies do, you're talking about mortgaging your property that
Yep.
maybe most of our members do not own their own property, right? So maybe you have the ability to mortgage that. Maybe you're mortgaging your home. Maybe you're putting your children's college funds on the line. Maybe you're pulling your kids out of college. You know, maybe, you know, all of these things that we as individuals have to deal with when we're balancing our own checkbooks. And then you all of a sudden have to float your entire business out of personal funds because there is no government support and there is no outside support. You know, even if you had a wealthy relative or you yourself, you know, have a bank account, at what point are you going to sit there and say, hey, look, I can only spend so much?
Yeah.
You know, if you're launching a business, you've done the calculation. This is what I'm going to invest. This is when and what I plan on getting back. If you're running a business, in some ways you're figuring out what your buffer is and what you have in savings or what you have access to. But how long can any business, especially an independently owned business, be expected to operate with
Right.
nothing?
And that is the existential crisis.
Yeah.
Where we are. So I feel like this is a great point for you to bring us into the National Independent Venue Association. So tell us how it happened. We're in mid-March. Everything is starting to shut down. I think we all kind of remember our last shows. How did you bring everything together, and how did you get to where we are now?
So our work with Independent Venue Week, Marauders work with Independent Venue Week, my company. We had created a national network of independent venues that we would celebrate every summer. You know, and it's somewhat like Record Store Day, but for clubs. And right after South by was announced being closed, only a day or two after that, we realized that there was a lot of uncertainty. We set up a national call. We invited all of our members, and I'll call it, you know, stakeholders, if you will, people that have a vested interest in the future of independent venues, had a massive town hall style call that we still continue to this date, every single week. And it was pretty clear very early on that, you know, Independent Venue Week's role was not to go to DC and lobby, and we needed somebody to go to DC and lobby. And there was never been a trade organization for independent venues and promoters. And so we, a group of us, collectively built a board and launched NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, hired a lobbyist, got support from a couple commercial partners. C-Tickets and Light, E-Tix, and Prism have all been very supportive and gave us the financial security to be able to retain the lobbyist. And everything else has been volunteers. You know, we've been an army of just people fighting for our own. That's really what it is. But we have a lot of support, right? We have thousands of artists that have shown support. We had 600 sign an official letter to Congress early on, like Lady Gaga and Jerry Seinfeld and Mavis Staples and Wyclef Jean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it really shows the value in what it is we're fighting for, because without this, the future of independent live events, comedy clubs and Broadway shows and music shows, like, who wants that?
Right.
And then the reality is if all these venues close, and I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but that is a very sincere, a very, very real possibility. And we are coming closer and closer to that precipice. Every single day we're getting notes of more venues closing for good. You won't lose live music or comedy. You will lose the option of choice.
Yeah.
You will lose where your money is going. You will lose who is benefiting from that. You will lose who is making the decisions. You will lose those things. And then that's a different argument, a different landscape altogether.
What are the two big bills that you all have gotten to the floor right now, and what are they asking for?
So we have Save Our Stages Act, which came out of our fight to save our stages. We launched that hashtag early on. Save Our Stages Act is a grant program. It is a $10 billion grant. It has bipartisan support. And that is, supporting small businesses, not publicly traded companies, and those that are in the most, need for this. It helps Broadway, it helps venues, it helps talent agents, et cetera, et cetera. That's the grant. We're also supporting Restart, and Restart is a loan program. It's not specific to our industry, but it is catered towards businesses that have zero revenue and high overhead and no clear timeline for reopening. So in an ideal scenario, we would have both Restart giving people the option for a loan, and we would have Save Our Stages, which is essentially compensating those that have had their businesses shuttered. It's common math.
Yeah.
Right.
How and where are we in getting Save Our Stages and Restart through Congress?
We have bipartisan support on both bills. We have that in both the House and the Senate. They are both co-sponsored from the beginning, from both Republicans and Democrats. And what we need now is we need Congress to be able to pass a COVID relief program. And then obviously
and include these bills.
Include these in that.
Yeah.
Maybe Jay, by the time this actually gets uploaded, and I don't know if that's within the hour, within the week, or whatever it might be, but by the time this gets uploaded, maybe what we're saying is out of date. I would love for that to be the case. And people can be like, oh, look at that. They're bemoaning what is potentially to come. But right now, we've been fighting since March, saying, hey, look, these programs that you have, they don't include us. We thought we would have resolution by May. We thought we'd have resolution by July. August was recess. We're in September. If Congress goes on recess without passing legislation that is going to save our stages, we will see a fall off a cliff.
Yeah. What can people do right now to help?
The most actionable thing that can be done is go to saveourstages.com to reach out to your congressperson and let them know how important live independent venues are. And there's a simple form there. We have tried to make it as easy as absolute possible. And that's it. We generated 2 million letters to Congress in support of saving our stages. We have everyone from Senator Schumer, and it's like we have huge champions trying to make this happen.
Yeah.
But for this to actually pass, we're going to need Congress to start passing legislation for COVID relief.
In the meantime, and again, yes, fingers crossed, by the time this gets uploaded, we have a passed bill. We have a passed bill. In the meantime, is there anything that is centralized, or what is the best way for people to help their local venues?
Yeah, look, there's a number of different venues that are doing their own events in some way or another. A lot of live streams, a lot of them are doing merch, golden tickets that can be redeemed at some point in the future, fundraisers for their staff. All of those would be the best way to be able to donate, funds to the local venues. NIVA started an emergency relief fund, which is intended to help the venues that are in the most dire need. There's a link from our website from the support page where you can make a donation directly to the emergency relief fund. There's also a link where you can donate directly to NIVA. We launched several different wearable items. I believe kids call it merchandise. And let's see. Hold on one second. Let me. We have. See what we got here. We got T-shirts, and we have face masks, and we have tote bags, and let's just brag for a second here. These might look familiar to you, Jay.
Little small brag.
Little small brag. Some EarPeace branded, NIVA earplugs as well. And I mean, this, but I've been using EarPeace for years, so that's my own endorsement right there.
Thank you so much, man. I am, I've been saying since we started having this conversation earlier this year that, we survive when everybody else survives. So we are also a part of this ecosystem. So maybe a little personal question. I want to leave on a high note, and I am very hopeful that we will have a bill in the near future. I know that there are a lot of people doing a lot of work, and I just saw Schumer up in New York, wearing his Save Our Stages mask. So I know that there's a lot of energy in this. So on a personal note, so when we get back into action and the venues are open again,
are you going to ask me where the party is? Because I'll tell you, the party's going to be everywhere.
I know. Yes. Yeah. Do you have a venue? Do you have a specific venue that you are that's top of your list to go back to?
Yeah. Here's the problem. I got plenty of them. And, working with independent venues and running Independent Venue Week for the last several years, it gives you, look, I've worked in the music industry and emerging music for my entire career. So I've spent most of my nights out at live shows. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. And I've traveled the world going to some amazing rooms. But herein lies the problem. We now have an organization that has about 3,000 members that I'm talking to and I can't even say daily basis, every single minute of every single day.
Yeah.
And when what's come from this has been a community of support and camaraderie, and our celebration tour, it will be nonstop. All we need is for the venues to be able to make it through to the end of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to just do a giant caravan, and we're going to hit every single venue. And I guess we're going to have to bring some bands around. And then, of course, it'll be great if the fans could come. So we should probably sell tickets to this. So you see where this is going. All of a sudden, what we should really just do is power on the lights, turn on the stage, get some people.
Just start touring.
Let's just go. Let's just go. Just run to your local venue, throw some money on the merch table. Let's get this going.
Well, I will be there next to you. I am really looking forward to that happening.
I think you and
And
I should start at different coasts and somehow find a way to meet in the middle,
meet in
or
the
maybe
middle.
start in the north and we'll do it. We should map this out though, Jay.
I love it. We will absolutely get a map up. And I just to recap, the for people who are watching, the number one thing that you can do is to go to saveourstages.com and email your member of Congress, your representative, and your senator. You can donate through the website. There is a fund through NIVA, and there's also a load of great merchandise that also goes towards helping this out. So, Moose, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And keep the faith, keep working at this.
Thank you, Jay. I'm excited about
All right.
this.
Thanks, man. Take care.
No problem.
Bye-bye.